Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this one, I'm taking a look at Black Widow with her latest uniform. And if you're wondering why I'm reviewing her first before the characters from the main update or Winter Soldier now that he has his tier 4, the honest answer is because I found her more interesting to test and because she is more impactful with her uniform upgrade. The characters from the main update either lacked an upgrade, such as a tier 4 for Red Hulk, or a uniform for Leader and potential tier 4 for him and the new Falcon. As for the tier 4s, Sam Wilson's Captain America upgrade is actually pretty solid in PvE, but because he is a male speed type, he is basically competing with Miles, who also has access to Team Up Collection and has that massive 120% damage increase to villain types. So you're basically just going to be using him in World Boss Legend, and in that case, Miles is a better option. For Winter Soldier, they made him a combat villain type, so now he can be used in ABX and ABL, but there you already have pretty solid options like Hulk and Dr. Octopus, and on top of that, even though he has iframe ignore, they didn't give him damage reduction or penetration, so you're going to either have to compromise in his build by either giving him invincible and lacking penetration, or giving him penetration and then the character is going to be too fragile and just end up dying. So overall, he's just basically going to be used as a potential slight replacement for either Hulk or Dr. Octopus, and because he doesn't have a team-up collection, for most people, he's not really going to be excelling there much. I mean, he seems pretty good for AB, so he's probably going to match those characters, and it's very possible that with the Thunderbolts movie he will get a team up and end up being the best overall combat villain character, so that's something to look out for. But in the current time, I didn't tier 4 him or Sam Wilson's Captain America. But if you do want me to review these characters, maybe just let me know in the comments and I'll see what I end up doing. So moving over to Black Widow's review, the first thing that I tested was using the old uniform without a damage proc and without a leadership or support. I had to go to stage 99 of null to do this test because I already had the character at tier 4. She definitely can complete this fight, but I ended up dying around the 6th health bar mark with around a minute and 15 seconds remaining, but that's all I needed to compare to the new uniform to see how much of an improvement that makes. And with the new one and the same setup, I was able to reach that 6th health bar mark with around 2 minutes remaining, or a 45-second improvement, and was able to complete the fight entirely with around a minute and 45 seconds left roughly. If you want to build a character specifically for PvE, I would probably recommend a CTP of Rage first. A bunch of her skills do need to be delay cancelled a little bit to get the maximum hits out of them, so a CTP of Rage just makes it a lot easier to do that. You can potentially use a CTP of Energy or Destruction, but it'll make the rotations a lot more difficult, and I'm not sure that you'll get the most out of her hits. Though a CTP of Energy does end up being the best option for her if you want to use her specifically as a striker in ABX and ABL, but it would have to probably be with the older uniform because the newer one apparently doesn't have the same impact that the old one did. The rotation that I use for the new uniform is to go into the 5th skill, wait till you see kind of the swing animation start, then you delay cancel that into a 3, cancel 4. When you have your ultimate skill, you use that and delay cancel it after you see the kind of gunfire appear or the animation for that, and then do the same rotation of a 5, delay cancel, 3, cancel 4. For stage 54 of Dark Phoenix, I still didn't use a damage proc, but I did end up using double supports, and she basically got down to the last 10 health bars before time ran out. So if you ended up using a damage proc, she would be able to complete the stage with roughly anywhere from a minute and 30 seconds left to potentially 2 minutes, depending on whether you have a Mighty or a Brilliant. This is actually pretty solid for a character that has a PvP-centered kit or can excel in PvP as well. And because she is part of a team-up collection, I believe I have mine at around 5% pierce. You can also go higher if you get lucky enough to get the max level, which I believe is 5 additional pierce or 10% pierce in total on top of your cards. There isn't really too much to say about Black Widow in ABX. Everyone will just be using Luna Snow for the speed female day, but with the mighty CTP of Rage, I was able to score close to 14.5 million. Probably could score higher if I played her a little bit better, but regardless, she doesn't even have all of the cancel effects for the different seasons, so you'd have to tier 4 her to do pretty much all of those seasons, and again, Luna Snow is the clear better option, but she seems decent for ABX specifically. For ABL, she doesn't seem as good because her skills are kind of delayed, and again, Luna Snow is just a better option here too. Unless you don't have her or her latest uniform, then Black Widow would be another option that you could consider for the Speed Female Day, but she won't nearly be as good as Luna Snow. I think that with this latest uniform for Black Widow, people will be most interested in her PvP performance over her PvE because she now has the Symbiote tag, meaning that she can leverage Agent Venom's support passive as well as his artifact. And we all know how ridiculous that's been in PvP, such as Timeline and Underworld Battle, with symbiotes taking over, such as Null, Silver Surfer, Carnage, and Spider-Man to a degree, either being featured again in Timeline or as a full team in something like Otherworld Battle, potentially even with the addition of Sleeper as a support as well, giving either debuff removal or giving a damage increase and damage reduction versus supervillains. With that said, I didn't really test Black Widow with those supports outside of 2 tests at the end because I wanted to see just how good she was with the uniform alone, and because Agent Venom will frequently be used for Null, Silver Surfer, and Carnage in things like Alliance Conquest, and she'll only get the benefit of that for the most part in Otherworld Battle. Sleeper is a potential good pairing with Black Widow if you're not using those for these other characters that I mentioned. The significant changes that Black Widow gets with this latest uniform is that she is a lot more tanky. She now has 40% damage reduction outright that isn't dependent on her dodging. It's only true for the penetration that she needs to dodge to get that as an activation. On top of that, she frequently goes into her 4th skill, which is her new iframe ignore skill, moved from her 3rd skill, and the 4th skill has invincible on it, so you'll immediately activate 5 seconds of invincible when she activates that skill. The 3rd skill previously had a little bit more mobility where she would jump over the opponent, which the 4th skill doesn't have. It kind of goes quickly into an attack and then has a few other hits afterwards. So it's a little bit quicker but has less mobility in exchange for that invincible and damage reduction. I found that a Brilliant Greed worked the best for me because she has that invincible proc and the damage reduction. It allows her to go into quick high burst damage, especially versus some of the higher meta characters that also have supports on them. You kind of need that extra damage on top of it. And she ended up performing the best overall if you combo her with additional support characters that provide her with a little bit more damage reduction to increase her survivability while she can perform that increased damage. And obviously you would also need her artifact to make the greed even more viable because it adds an even increased layer of survivability, adding that extra dodge layer on top of her regular dodge. One of the other options you can go with is a Brilliant Authority because she has that 40% damage reduction. With a Brilliant Authority and that 60%, you can go up to that kind of 100% mark and get the pseudo immortality, but I didn't find this worked nearly as well as I thought it would because 1, she constantly activates invincible from the 4th skill, which is on the iframe, so it frequently activates, and on top of that, she does end up dodging a lot, so you might not necessarily get that full damage accumulation from the Brilliant Authority proc, and the Steel proc might activate when you're basically in invincible or dodging or hiding in your iframes, and you might not really get much out of it. Considering she doesn't really use her healing skill from the 5th, it's only really used after the 4th and 3rd skill, her health is just going to be whittled down and she's not going to be nearly as tanky as other characters that have that sustainability to keep healing back up. I also tried going with the CTP of Conquest to try and mitigate the issues with her healing so she can potentially get a little bit more healing when she activates the 5th, and if you stack her with a bunch of damage reduction characters, she could potentially be tanky enough to have that healing be a little bit more influential. But the issue is that, again, her survivability isn't that great because the 5th skill just doesn't activate nearly enough for the healing to matter. So in the case of Brilliant Authority and Brilliant Conquest, Brilliant Authority does end up being a little bit better. And with the Brilliant Conquest, The benefit you have is that you also have a little bit more reflect immunity, but oftentimes she's hiding in iframes, so that won't really matter, only versus characters that have reflect and iframe ignore. I didn't test out Black Widow too much in Alliance Conquest, but found she paired pretty well with Sleeper because you can get that additional damage reduction to villains and the damage increase as well as the debuff removal. So she can be good for taking out Doom pretty quickly before he does his counter, and she's pretty solid for taking out Adam Warlock now that she has the damage reduction and the quick attack and type advantage versus him. I still ended up dying to his second life, but I used a pretty low effort team just to be able to take out his first life, and you can use pretty much any kind of leadership you want with that Sleeper support to kind of cater to the opponents you're fighting. So you can use characters like Red Hulk, for example, to give you a little bit more health and damage reduction. You can use She-Hulk to get even more damage, or just use 2 supports that give damage reduction to make her even tankier. So in this particular case, I threw M'Baku in the leadership to fight a Thanos, and again, because she has that quick iframe ignore on the 4th skill now and the invincible, she can potentially tank out Thanos's quick iframe ignore attack and be able to take him out even with a hella support. It was a little bit of a stretch to take out a full zombie team afterwards, but I did end up proccing their kind of pseudo immortality kind of effect, so any kind of team I use afterwards will just be easily able to clean that up. And again, you can make the first team even stronger by actually adding a meta character instead of a leadership and support like I did with M'Baku. Alternatively, you could also do what I did, which is have Black Widow with that double support team at the top and then just have another team at the bottom that'll clean up any kind of opponents that she left at the immortality activation or cleaned up one of their lives. Overall, if you're interested in PvP, then this uniform for Black Widow is a solid upgrade for Alliance Conquest and Otherworld Battle. She's not really going to be used in Timeline because she doesn't have an immortality or a revive effect, but outside of those modes, she is pretty solid. And we don't know what the new PvP mode that they talked about that's coming this year is going to be, but she could potentially have value there too. If you're not really sure what to give her for a PvP build, I would say that Agreed seems to be a little bit more ideal if you're facing kind of the higher tier metas to get at least one activation of the revive or immortality effect. Her survival won't be as good, but you can potentially clean up some bigger teams if you pair her right or have a good strong team in the second set for something like Alliance Conquest. If you want to make her more consistent overall though, potentially make her a little bit more consistent in things like Otherworld Battle, then that CTP of Authority is probably the way to go for the most part. Just keep in mind that with that Authority, she will be a little bit more consistent with the slightly lower tier metas, but she might struggle versus the characters that are a little bit more tankier, especially if they're comboed with supports that she would need that extra damage from something like the Greed to be able to either take out one of their lives or again activate their immortality effect. That does it for this one. I'm not entirely sure what my next video will be because I'm not really too interested in tier 4ing Sam Wilson's Captain America or Winter Soldier, considering that they don't really add much to my roster, and although I do have the materials for it, it just seems like I'd be tier 4ing them just to tier 4 them and won't really get much use out of them. So I might just hold off for now. If you guys are interested in seeing a particular video, I might just do kind of a recap of how those characters perform just up to level 80 or how the other characters from the main update perform currently. But yeah, I'm not really too sure. I might just hold off and see what's next and potentially just do videos on those instead. Anyways, if you found this video interesting or useful, please consider liking and subscribing, potentially sharing it with others. It could help them out and helps my channel grow and make more videos like this. As always, I appreciate people taking the time to watch my videos, so thank you, but the video is now over.